Welcome back to We Know Scripted TV, where today we know Andor Season 2, Episodes 1, 2, 3. My name is Grace Leeder, but of course, I'm not alone. I'm here with Taran Armstrong. Taran, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I feel like I'm currently repping light side, and Mike Bloom is kind of dark side right now.
We didn't even need to talk about our wardrobe colors, more about our dispositions. Listen, it's fun here on the dark side. You know what they say? Dance like it's your daughter's wedding and you're about to get busted for money laundering.
Do you know what I call that, Mike Bloom? What happened at the end of the episode?
What's that?
Dance Dance Revolution. I've been holding on to that one.
I loved it. You've been waiting 3 years to finally get to talk about Dance Dance Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me a little bit of like kind of Saltburn vibes at the end. Was it
Party on the
murder on the dance floor? Just like
yeah.
obviously Mon Mothma. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe the morning after of this wedding, we'll have things as lecherous to have Mon Mothma dance through her residences, but. Right now, she's just trying to dance all her cares away while everyone else is dancing their way out of danger.
Yeah. All right. We're going to talk about Andor. I said episodes 1, 2, 3, and I meant like 1, 2, 3, but 1, 2, and 3, I guess is what I'm saying. We'll talk about all 3 of them. We have watched all of them. We'll assume you have watched them all as well. And we're going to be spoiling all 3 episodes here in our recap and give our thoughts about all 3 episodes. It's very early on in our Andor season, so make sure you're subscribed. We Know Scripted TV, or you can search We Know Star Wars in any of your podcast app of choice. And we're also on YouTube. Ratings and reviews are very much appreciated. Will be the release schedule for this show is 3 episode drops. Season 1 had these 3 episode arcs, but it was released sort of the first 3 episodes and then weekly from there on. The schedule, as far as we can tell, is 3 episodes per week over the course of 1 month, and we will be with you hopefully pretty much as soon as the episodes have finished airing on Disney Plus. I'll just open up to you, Taran. What did you make of arc number 1? We're back with maybe one of the most highly acclaimed, or at least critical success stories in the Star Wars of the last number of years.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that when I started watching Andor in the first season, the first arc was my least favorite. I feel like it was it was a little slow to get into it. I think it might be the same again in the second season. I feel like this was a bit of a slow start. I'm really happy to be back, but I do feel like I wish we had gotten more in 3 episodes than ultimately what we got. It was kind of my overall impression.
What about you, Mike?
It was fine. Which kind of stinks again coming in after 2 years and, final season. We know that now we only have 9 episodes of Andor left to talk about. And yeah, it has a tough job of following up on, also to Taran's point, after a bit of a more laborious start, just an absolute hot finish down the stretch, culminating in this, absolute mayhem that occurs on the titular Rick's Road. I think for a number of reasons, including the timeline that, again, as we talked about in our preview show, we do have to start or end where Rogue One begins with Cassian Andor. Now we have 4 years to catch up on. And so it does make sense that they jump forward a year, but I don't think it necessarily helps in terms of putting ourselves in with these characters, because chances are, and I think, we're going to be doing a lot of filling in the blanks for people who didn't necessarily rewatch since they first watched Andor live. It's like, okay, who are these people? What were they doing last? If you don't have that information, it's a little tough to kind of pick up on who everyone is and what they're all doing, because obviously with a lot of covert operations, there's a lot of secretive hush-hush talking. There's a lot of picking up on plot points that immediately closed out the first season. I will say, there were some fun moments to end things on. I mean, when you have Cassian Andor comedically trying to pilot a TIE fighter for 3 episodes, you can't really go wrong. Can't go wrong with, again, Genevieve O'Reilly perhaps producing the highlight of the 3 episodes for me, and just like taking out all of her frustrations in the form of a dance at the wedding. So I was getting into it a little bit more. I will say I'm a little happy that we kind of were 2 and done with the brigade. Taran, I know you love talking about a brigade, but the danger that happens with introducing a bunch of new characters in Andor is sometimes, usually it's more hit than miss, and they kind of missed here. And I think for me, kind of contributed to my overall meh feelings about the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, I think that if you look at season 1, I will agree that I think it took me like a second try on Andor to get into it. I was like watching it and I don't even know if I had any of the hype around it or what, but I was not vibing with it completely and kind of doing the thing of like not really paying full enough attention probably during Andor season 1, to the point that then when I was like hearing that it was starting to get good, it's like, oh, I think I'll have to go back and start again because I wasn't probably paying enough attention. And I do think that for me, like, probably I did not go back and rewatch the season, but if I did, I bet that I would be mistaken to say that where I really feel like for me, my memory of it picking up steam and being like, oh wow, this is amazing, is episode 6, which is the Eye. And I feel like that culmination of sort of that second arc in a way that's a little bit of what the show does. We do then move into the prison, arc of it all. That technically does sort of like lead into episode 10, so between sort of arc 3 and 4, but I feel like it is like building up to something. And what I would say about these first 3 episodes is that there are 4 storylines that I kind of almost want to say like 3.5. We get so little about one of the other ones, although it starts off with a lot of like a huge info dump, which is the Dedra and Syril stuff. But I would say that almost all of them felt like they were building up to something else, and none of them really felt like they got such a I mean, there is this like, I guess there is, I think, between Cassian and everything that's happening on Mino Ra, I guess those two definitely feel like they come together. The other two feel like we're leading up to something else that's more important in a way that I feel like it just doesn't feel as fulfilling as we've come to expect. But after like a full season of 4 different arcs in season 1, I don't know if that tracks for you, Mike or Taran. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think what helped in the first season was this idea that there were all these different parties that culminated in this event in episode 3. While I agree that I think maybe the first time Andor really felt complete as a series and like locked in as to what it was going for was episode 6. I've rewatched most of season 1 in preparation for this. Episode 3 is actually pretty good too, especially when you realize in retrospect, like, oh, we're going back to Ferrix a lot more than you think initially, where it's meeting Luthen for the first time, and it's where Cyril Karn ends up starting his, Javert, Jean Valjean-esque grudge to bring him in. And so I do think that season 1 had this almost planetoid of Cassian Andor as a character that everyone was kind of revolving around in some way, shape, or form, as he himself was kind of ebbing in and out, where he spends, a considerable amount of time in jail. He's undercover. There are still characters that are operating for and against each other with this idea of helping the revolution in Andor by proxy. Right now, we're not necessarily getting that, and I think that happens just because we have pursued these kind of separate character paths. That Mon Mothma, for instance, doesn't really matter what she's doing and how it pertains to what's going on with our rebels right now, because she's more so focused on the political side of things, something that I've usually actually been more on and off with when it comes to this show. So I am waiting for that inevitable moment of culmination. It feels to me like having to reset these characters in the positions that they're in. And that comes with acknowledging the fact that a year has passed. They kind of have respectively gone about their business. And assumingly there will be some sort of, kickoff event that will bring everybody back together again for, the latter part of the season.
Yeah, I think for me, and this might have just been me, but especially in the first episode, I personally just found it a little bit jarring how quickly we were bouncing around between the different storylines. It felt like the average scene length for each story was just so short. I was getting this like tiny bite-sized thing and then immediately bouncing to another thing. It was really hard to like get my bearings. And I was thinking about like, I think I might have enjoyed these 3 episodes more if they had maybe gone in the complete opposite direction and like just entirely focused each episode on one of the big storylines. Like if you start with Mon Mothma, if I haven't said that out loud, Mon Mothma, and her storyline, and you're hearing about like, well, Cassian's not answering the phone, and you don't know why. And in the second episode, you get his whole journey about like these people that captured him, and he's got.
Would you call it Taran Armstrong Mon Mothma?
Sure. And then maybe the third one is this like harvesting planet, and Cassian comes to the rescue, why, what he's been through, why he's late at that point, and like you can sort of like bring everything together with that climax. I feel like that would have helped me, and I think that with that structure, it would have felt like there was a little more buildup and a little more detail in each story for me personally. Because I don't quite think it was the content that I was super upset with as much as just like how long it felt it took to get to an end that didn't feel that satisfying. But if it had been a little more segmented, I think it would have felt a little more punchy and like we're leading into something. So and that's why I'm not super concerned long term for this show, for this season. I think that I think I probably had a similar issue in the early parts of season 1, and I have a lot of faith that they will eventually be using this to build into something really exciting in the future.
I think the best thing for me, which as we start to dive into specific stories here, is there are particular moments in every storyline, I think, where I'm like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Like that could be really fun. That is enough for me to be excited about next week and getting to dive deeper. Mike, I'm going to throw it to you. I feel like we do kind of have 4 storylines. Pick one off the table. We have Cassian with his TIE fighter. We have Bix on Minu Rao. We have the wedding. And we have a little bit of Dedra and Syril.
I let's start with our titular character, because Cassian obviously is going to get the most airtime here. And to be candid, maybe we sort of like take care of the least favorite storyline first to kind of like get it out of the way. Because look, the first scene was fire. To your point, Grace, about like looking at something being interesting, like the fact that we jump in on Cassian Andor like undercover on a job, and his job is operating a TIE fighter. Like, how many of us as kids getting indoctrinated into the Star Wars universe thought about how much fun it would be to fly one of these spaceships that seems aerodynamically like it would never operate? And the pure comedy of the fact that the first thing he does when he gets this, like, basically to test drive the Porsche, is to immediately put it in reverse and back it into the corner. And he literally has to shoot his way out to get over to the planet. I thought that was just such a great visual and such a great action set piece to, again, really remind us how unique Andor is. And then perhaps fittingly, things crash land a little bit, in my opinion.
I thought it was such a cool starting point too for the season to show how far he's come as a character in his acceptance of being part of the rebellion, as he's now explaining to somebody else who's new, and he sounds like such a fully faithful person in this, which is sort of like a reset and reminder of like how far he's come through season 1 to get to this place.
Yeah, it's interesting comparing to like, it's almost equivalent to me of like when Syril now is the person doing the orientation at the Bureau of Standards, right? Of like, I found myself in this job that I didn't want. It turns out I'm pretty dang good at it. Now I'm the person that has become the mentor to the mentee. And yeah, we have these little nuggets of that writing that I always love in Andor, where he tells this woman, the Empire cannot win. You'll never feel right unless you're doing what you can to stop them. You're coming home to yourself, which is just such a fun idea.
Yeah, this is my favorite part of Cassian's storyline, is this first initial like TIE fighter heist mission that he goes on. But it's most importantly, it's the character stuff. And it's the way in which this interaction with this rebel who's a little nervous about doing rebel stuff. That is, I think it's like it's such a strong way to start the show and to be back into what are the themes of Andor, which is, we talked about this in the preview pod, which the thing that I resonate the most with is just that it is really about the rebels coming together to fight the Empire. And that seems like that's, of course that would be the most interesting part of the show, but it just is. And it's this way in which it is hard for her to decide to sort of like do this, but it's sort of like with his mentorship that he's able to do it. I think it's a really good point, Taran, that it's a really good indicator of how far he's come from season season 1. And then Mike, to your point, the shooting the walls out to fly through the wall is tremendously fun. I do think, as you said, we crash land, and this is it Maya Pei Brigade. I think it's certainly the weakest part is their sort of this misunderstanding that they don't believe that the person. So Cassian's role here is to hand the TIE fighter over to it's Porco, I believe.
Yeah, not to be confused with Porkins, though I don't know if they're related.
To Porco, who is not around, and it was acting suspicious according to the brigade. So we actually don't get resolution to Porco, which we'll plant our flag in terms of whether or not we think Porco shows up at some point. Is there a rescue mission in store, or is that a theme of the story of like this is what happens when you're part of these dangerous missions? But certainly, I feel like we get bogged down a little bit in like the brigade civil war, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, what basically happens, and I think, unfortunately, where this fails, because I do think there's probably some themes here in terms of infighting, and, like, technically we're all on the same side, so why are we quite literally firing at each other? I mean, that's no better represented from the fact that these guys are doing their big, demeasuring rock, paper, scissors offshoot in the middle of this gathering, and then here comes this big-ass boar creature to just absolutely tear them to smithereens, like, so on the nose of you're so busy worrying about who's taking up, the best positions on the Titanic that you didn't even see the iceberg that is in front of you. But I think my largest problem with this storyline was that it was just too many characters. And granted that we did kill off a few of them at the end of episode 1 when there's just a bunch of firefight. Clearly, when Cassian's captured, there is a lot of tension as to like so-and-so's brother took off and they thought he left them behind, but one saying that he actually just got killed, another saying like, oh, well, what happened to this other person? It's tough because I don't know if they intended for us to like get used to these names and faces, because that's what I'm used to on Andor, right? It's like wherever he's settled into, thinking about the Eye of Aldani as an example, like getting to know those 5 heist people that Cassian was with was a lot easier than the sort of like dozen nameless faces that we get just kind of yelling at each other over the course of 2 episodes before Cassian finally gets the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah,
I don't know, Taran. I feel like there weren't like scenes where it's like, "Hey, you Brizzo" or whatever. I didn't feel like I got that, so I don't know if we're supposed to be remembering these people that much.
I never got the sense that they were important characters. Quite frankly, they were played off as comedy for most of it. And so like maybe they'll come back into play at some point. But really, you only really remember the main 2. I think the guys that were arguing back and forth most of the time, and. You kind of have to assume that they come back into play at some point because we really spent a lot of time on them. But yeah, I think the issue that I had with this storyline in these 3 episodes, I always think about Brandon Sanderson, who massive fantasy author, and he does a lot of like workshops and lectures on writing, and he talks a lot about promises and payoffs. And how if you make a promise in your story and you don't pay it off, then you need to like bring the readers or the audience with you. And so like I feel like we started this arc with the promise of like Andor's on a mission and he's going to do something with this TIE fighter that is related to the mission, and all the while we're getting reminded by like Luthen, like, oh, what's going on? Like, have they got that we got this is important? And then he gets sidetracked. He's no longer doing the mission anymore. He's just dealing with these brigade people, and that feels icky. That feels like, oh, we got to get through this so we can do the thing that we're supposed to do. And when you're stuck in that icky stuff the whole time, and then like you still don't even know what the mission fully was and like what we're supposed to be, that we just vaguely know that we're supposed to be doing something and we're not doing it, and then eventually he escapes and he ends up not doing that thing. He ends up having to do a different thing, and it's just like that promise was never fully paid off. And you don't have to be that linear, but I do think that in terms of like the experience along the way, I think it suffered.
Yeah, I think you, if you're not going to do the thing you said you were going to do, I think you ultimately have to end up doing something where it's like, you're like, oh, that's cool. That's okay. Like,
that's
okay,
better than I thought was going to happen. Yeah. But instead this kind of felt like we just got distracted. Kathy got stuck in the caramel and now they managed to pull her out, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely number 2 out of 2 brigades that you have talked about, Taran, within the past 6 months or so.
Yeah, so I mean Cassian and I think what's a little bit there is a moment that I thought were like, that's interesting. It's when they literally tried to like physically move the TIE fighter
Yes.
to shoot it at the other people. I thought that and then like and there was something in there in terms of like, oh, there is a fun back and forth that could be added there, and then but that's like kind of it. And then it's like we'll actually play rock paper scissors, which I think also in contrast to something we get in that same episode, I believe, which is I think all the cultural stuff of the wedding is far superior than like if you're gonna do something that's kind of like, and we'll do the thing we all know that we're gonna do it, we're gonna play rock. You're like, oh, it's rock paper scissors. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, I mean, there's
that.
a little bit of a fun payoff, right? When they're talking about like choose your second. We're playing
Yeah.
by these rules, full submission. You're like, oh, these guys are gonna fight to the
Yeah,
death, and
yeah.
nope, it's
No.
just rock paper scissors where they aggressively snarl at each other when you win.
Well, and like I think another way to look at it too is to compare it to the prison arc in the first season, where it's a very similar thing. Where like
Right.
you have an idea of what's going to happen, and then he gets arrested, and you're like, wait, what is this? Is such a side thing. Like now he needs to get out of this, but then it turns into its own really cool thing, and you're like, oh, I'm actually really glad that happened. That was so badass. And I don't really feel like you think of this particular thing as that, but there were some funny bits in it, I thought.
And my assumption
I
is you liked it. You liked the.
I thought it was funny.
Rock paper snake. My assumption is that like we didn't wrap up getting to Porco. So my assumption is that at some point Porco is important, and Porco is seemingly on this planet.
That's interesting. Yeah, because they allude to like, Porco was being real sneaky with us as well. Like I assumed that they killed Porco. That
that's what I assumed too.
They turned him into
They
bacon.
heavily implied that they did, right?
Oh, okay, then I'm just
considering that they were more than happy to kill their own crew members just willy-nilly. I think they were absolutely lit up Porco for looking at him the wrong way.
Okay, this is worse then, because I was like, well, at least there's something. At least Porco's out there. We'll get to meet
Again,
Porco.
I have to imagine something about this is important. I just am not actually sure what.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see. But he gets Cassian makes it away, gets back on the comms, and I think we can wrap that up as we get to the end. Do we want to move into we're on Minu Rao? I thought for my money, so this is basically like this is where Bix and Brasso and Will are staying in order to sort of be under the radar, and they're going to and there's some comms, and they're going to be like working on this farm, but there's an Imperial investigation. I don't know. For the most part, I thought for almost all of this is probably for me the best the best of the bunch here of these
interesting.
I do think so. I think so. I think it has a better payoff than the wedding. So I think I think that those are kind of, for me, I go back and forth on those two, but for the most part I think this is good, except I do think there's like some of the like ultimate the conflict between the man who comes to basically assault Bix. We could differ about whether or not we that works or not. Is it too evil? I don't know. I think
I'll just say it's freaking weird to me that in 50 years of Star Wars, this, from my money, is the first time we've heard the word rape said.
Yeah. So I mean,
I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I was busy being like, this feels a little cliche, but then this hasn't actually been in Star Wars much, has it?
So I think, yes, it's cliche. And because I think that the piece about like, there is a thing that we've been talking about where it's like, wow, the last season of Andor, not that, things were going like so great in America, but it's a very different time right now. And this literal thing of like trying to figure out who are illegals and who doesn't have hits a little differently in 2025 than maybe even it did a few years ago. And so for the most part, I feel like to me, there felt like the most immediate tension here. Like I never really felt like Cassian was in danger of like he's just not, well, he can't die, but also he was not gonna die. And it's not that I thought like Bix necessarily would die, but I definitely did. I was thinking about it, and almost right before everything happens with Brasso, I did think like, I think we need to lose somebody here for this, like the teeth of this to feel real. So I found this actually very compelling in terms of, again, the themes of the show. I feel like we're the climax of it, I feel like maybe not works quite as well. I think to your point, Taran, it's very cliche. But for the most part, I thought it worked pretty well. But I don't know. What do you think, Taran?
Yeah, I think I agree with you that I think there is compelling stuff here, and I think for me, it comes back to what I said initially, where like I think that if this had been maybe a self-contained episode or just at least a bit more focused, I would have felt a little bit more of the claustrophobia and like the fear and paranoia of like, is the guy going to betray us to the Imperials? Are they going to find us? Like, what's going to happen? But again, because we were just constantly cutting out of it, it just felt like I was never there long enough to feel the fear of what might actually happen. But I do agree with you. I think that there's interesting stuff here. I think this is important stuff to show, not only to advance these particular characters and Cassian's storyline, but also as just another example of how awful it is to live under Imperial rule, and like the different kinds of help that you can get from like others and all that kind of stuff. And so it was good. This one brings me back to my initial complaint of just like too choppy.
Yeah, I mean, or Chopper, if you will. No, we got B2 emo coming back. Our
Yeah.
dear old friend B2, which was so sad when he's like, I don't want to go. They're like,
I thought he was going to shed a tear. A little grease
Yeah.
strap. would
Yeah,
come
just a
out.
little bit of oil there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I largely did like it, and I think the character of the farmer, I think, is incredibly important. I think it actually does shade in a nuance of this idea of revolution that actually hasn't been focused yet with
Yeah.
Andor, which is like the people who will support the revolutionaries to a certain extent, right?
Okay, well, this is actually interesting. Hold on.
Yeah.
Because I interpreted that scene as the guy covering for the farmer because he didn't actually rat him out.
Oh, that's interesting. See, I read it as like this guy got pushed too far. It's like the Imperials are now trouncing all over my business and my living, and was it worth it to house these people? And so that's a very interesting, different read on
You
it.
just made me realize that I never got confirmation on that theory and that it might have been a wrong interpretation
Yeah,
in the
it's
moment.
Smile. I don't know. I read this. I read
They
the Smile
they
kinda evilly.
exchanged a look that made me
Yeah.
feel like
I think
So
it just
wasn't
said
sure.
Brasso is like best boy, which is also why he had to die. It's like this is a guy that's been covering for Cassian for the longest time when he was out gallivanting around. He's of course going to do it for this other guy. But if indeed this guy has the motives that I assigned to him, I think that is something that is really salient because I think there is this palpable idea, and Cassian talks about it with this, neophyte rebel in the first scene of like that fear is something you need to acknowledge as part of surrendering yourself to something like a rebellion, to living in the shadows, as Luthen would say. You need to sacrifice a part of that light. And it is always a back and forth. And look, it certainly weighs in our heads nowadays as well as to like, how are you going to sort of contribute in your own ways if you feel like the powers that be are doing things you don't like? And there's always going to be lines with different people. And for this guy, the line, the crop cutting, if you will, might have come down to like, yeah, this is getting in the way of the good, hard work that we're trying to do here. And due to me housing these rebels, it's mucked up the entire thing. So I thought that decision, if indeed my read's correct, was really interesting. I actually think, the entire sexual assault was not necessarily as like cliche, or once I swallowed the idea that like, wow, I cannot believe in a Star Wars story, they genuinely brought this topic up. Again, this is what's awesome about this show is like it is a far different shade of the palette than any other Star Wars series we have. It does, though, make me feel horrible for Bix, who just as a reminder for people who don't remember Bix in season 1, had like Cassian, her former lover, come to her, basically bring her into this entire operation. She's the one that connects Luthen to him. He ends up escaping in the midst of a bunch of shit going down in Ferrix. She then ends up getting detained, tortured by Dedra Miro, winds up a shell of herself to the point that when Cassian finds her in the finale, like he has to rouse her and get her out of her catatonic state to get onto the ship. And guess what? It seems like she's basically out of the frying pan and into the fire at this point. So I hope this doesn't mean that Tony Gilroy is just going to make Bix torture porn for the rest of the season, because she deserves better.
Yeah, agreed. So the thing about this look, actually, because I'm thinking my read of it, which is that it's evil Smile, evil, like I actually got you.
Like he saw that movie and he caught the disease or the demon or whatever it was.
Yes. It actually doesn't work. So I think there's a thing where like if it's in there as a smile of like, haha, I actually tricked you and I ratted you out. That really doesn't work for me in terms of the thing that you're saying, Mike. Like, and I agree with you about this perspective of like living under imperial rule. The like, haha, I tricked you the whole time really doesn't actually work for me. And the smile doesn't really make sense for that. I do think that there's something really powerful in the like this idea, like often when I think about like why do people go along with like why do people essentially like often like vote in fascism, like why do we vote for why do people vote for something that then like ultimately removes your rights and limits your right? There's an air of selfishness to it of I will not be the one harmed by what is going to happen, so I'm going to go along with it. And I do think there's this thing of like, I guess you could read this if we read it from the guy's fully, like there's at some point he turns them in for sort of like selfish or evil reasons. There's either the like most extreme version, which he's like he knew all along he would turn these people in, it didn't really matter who they, like he would always turn them in. And then there's this other one of like he only realized he would turn them in once the imperial, like once they're doing this like scouting and he doesn't want to get in trouble, so he does it. And that's to me where like if it's that version, the smile doesn't really work, because I think you can give off something that's more of like embarrassment and shame. That's the way you can convey like why this was an evil thing to do, whereas the smile doesn't really work. If the smile is like, I'm trying to protect you here, that is interesting. I think that there's like something, so I'm definitely interested in what the audience thinks to that. But that's why I think all of that stuff is why I do like this thing. I definitely do feel quite bad for Bix, and agree. Hopefully this is not sort of I don't want her to continue to be like a, like I want her to have agency in this thing in terms of like her role. So hopefully we get that. And by the end of it, they are flying off. We don't know where they're going, right? We just go into hyperspace.
I mean, they just had to leave the home that they've been staying in, assumingly for the past year. So I don't know if they're going to any sort of rendezvous point, or if they're just finding like another place to settle down and catch their breath. Probably still staying in the Outer Rim though, right? Because like Imperial forces are now encroaching on the Outer Rim, but the Outer Rim is by and large known for like, the boonies, right? The dead man's land that nobody really tries to venture out to because there's nothing there.
The one last thing about this that I think to turn your point about the brigade, and we like introduce all of these people, I think there's a level to this that for a reason why I could talk about the wedding arc maybe being a little bit more satisfying, is it's basically all characters we know for them. Like it's almost entirely people we've met before, and we're learning about a lot of people, like Will's love interest in this thing seems
the little farm girl he had to leave behind
seems only to service a moment of tension where he has like taken his bike and has to like figure, has to get back. So, it's okay. But there's also a lot going on here, Taran, in terms of like a lot of new stuff happening in this storyline as well. A lot of new characters.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we let's because I think we should end on the wedding arc. So let's actually go to Dedra. Is this
can I say this is my favorite?
You could say it's your favorite. Yeah, we get very little of it, but this Gorman, the unveiling of the Gorman plan, the propaganda plan, the eventual like the mining of the spider, of the stuff. Is this the first? Have we seen like movies before in Star Wars, Mike? Because
that's why there's so much aesthetic stuff that happened in this episode that I loved. First off, we'll get into it. Freaking loved DJ Roomba Orb at the wedding. The fact that we get later on with Dedra and Syril's place, we get like Star Wars smooth jazz, like it's smooth jizz in Star Wars universe playing. Absolutely incredible. And here, where we have a tourism video for Gorman. I absolutely love this. Like I know it's supposed to be in a long time ago, so they try to make this technology purposely archaic to not make it feel like it's out of date when it's supposed to be futuristic. But the fact that they had like basically the Kodak carousel and like the projector running, it was so good. I mean, first off, let's Leo point at the screen. We did have a Rogue One cameo happening in this scene. Ben Mendelsohn ends up appearing as Director Krennic. He is the baddie of Rogue One from the Imperial side of things. And I loved the marketing guys as well, because again, I think that's incredibly salient. I think there's been a lot of discourse nowadays about how much social media and media networks have been used as sort of like, some people have used the term propaganda arm, of just an ability to communicate a certain message to people in a certain way that they don't even know that they're sort of being indoctrinated with this thing. And so when they have these two suits kind of stand up and basically be like, yeah, remember when this big rebellion happened, and remember when this thing happened on Gorman? Nope, we made it up, but it's just so you could think about Gorman in a certain way. I think it was a very small tidbit, but speaks again to this idea of authoritarianism that is so prevalent nowadays.
Yeah, when Dedra was like, "Yeah, that plan's fine and all, but I feel like there's better stuff." I was like, "It's good enough for us, though."
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, don't dismiss it too quickly, Dedra. It might be very good. Yeah. I like the idea of fueling, basically, like, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of modern day conspiracy theories about this. Of like, that protest was actually, Antifa or whatever.
Yeah.
And this was basically them
Crisis
being like,
actors.
yeah, this was them basically being like, no, like, we basically let the Gorman rebellion, like that like revolt happen to basically paints Gormans as someone that, like, when they rebel again, people will not be friendly to Gorman revolt. I thought I think the ideas of this are maybe the strongest of any
Yeah.
of the three stories, Mike.
And also the idea of like, also environmentalism, like they're basically going to frack the planet to get these particular minerals for reactor cores. I also did love, again, another fun shout out to the original trilogy, that the Emperor wants unlimited power, though I guess that's more of the prequel trilogy than it is the original trilogy, but that they're saying like, yeah, you know what, we might blow up the planet. And so that's what you're here to do, is essentially trying to quash any rebellion that might happen from us displacing millions of people from their homes due to us trying to extract core minerals from this planet.
Taran, so basically Krennic is gonna like spot that as like somebody who's like, I want your opinion on this. I want you to basically lead this project, essentially. That's why I've brought you here. She's ultimately going to accept, and then her and Syril are going to have a lovely dinner party with Edie. What do you make of sort of the Dedra Syril arc of the 3 episodes?
I was very surprised that like we really spent a decent amount of time on this. And like they did this whole, like, I feel like I guess I didn't expect this, but like these 3 episodes were really, like, a lot of them were like, a lot of the episode parts were focused on comedy. And this was so clearly set up to be like, oh man, they're dreading something. They're prepping for
Yeah.
what is gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then his mom shows up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was funny. I think in a block of episodes where I was hoping more happened, it did feel like, oh, we're spending time on this, but it was, I think, in a vacuum, very entertaining, and I think like valuable for them as characters.
I will be so forward as to say that in the hit series Andor, my favorite characters are Cyril Karn and Dedra Miro.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I know we're supposed to be on the sides of the rebels, but there's
No, that's
something
okay.
that's so much fun about these little assholes. This like Pete Campbell look to Cyril Karn of like, I know there's something wrong and nobody's believing me, but I have a sense of justice. That's what's also really fun as well, is that like, yes, there are certainly people that exist within this fascistic structure who are just more so doing it for the power grab. But there are people like Dedra and Syril who are legitimately, they don't even need the Kool-Aid. Like, they sincerely believe, yes, Cassian Andor is a thief and a murderer, and he must be brought to justice. And it has the two of them commingling in a manner of speaking. I'm so glad these two crazy kids worked out. For those that don't remember, there was this like kind of weirdly charged moment in the finale where like she's about to get stampeded on and everything that's going on Rick's Road, and like he saves her, and they sort of have this look between them that's a little bit like, and the follow-up sound is, so it turns out that, they are happily together right now, at least. So it seems like Cyril is probably not going to be terribly happy about the fact that, Dedra is not bringing him into this Gorman plan. But I also listen, Edie is a very fun source of comedic relief in this first season with just how hard she's been on her son and how Uncle Arlo this, Uncle Harlow that. And so to have Dedra just come in and absolutely read her the freaking riot act and scare one of the most unscarable people in Andor in general was great. Like, it's get yourself a girl that can use her lack of, parental love to absolutely tell off your doting mother when she's riding your ass too hard.
It's a pretty amazing speech she gives her when, like, so first of all, if the internet is not memeing Syril Karn lying on the bed while his girlfriend and mother are in the other room, we're doing the internet wrong. Like, him just like face down on the
Yeah,
bed.
because it's like a studio apartment as well. Like, there's no
so much
doors.
smaller than I thought it was.
Yeah, in like camera pans, he's like right.
They're operating on, like, I know Dedra's high up in the ISB, but like they're operating on a bureaucrat's budget, so it's not going to be that much, I imagine, especially in Coruscant.
It's so good. I like when Dedra like breaks is like, actually I have a different plan for how all of this is going to work. Think before you speak. It's just so good.
Yeah, I mean, I will guarantee engagement, but it will be inversely proportional to the amount of anxiety that you create. It's just, God, I love my in-laws, but like that should be a contract that gets written up, at some point of like, all right, these are the stipulations that we will go through. And that's what makes it so fun is, again, Dedra is somebody that is, while she is sometimes very gut oriented, which kind of separates her from, her boss, Qyburn, who ends up showing up in this season. She is someone that is usually very by the books, very logic forward. And so it does make a lot of sense that even in passions of the heart, she's still like, okay, I will provide you the contract of which we will engage in, familial relations. And if you violate these contracts, I reserve the right to sever this man from your life.
It's very good. I like it. I liked it a lot. I think this is probably the tension. There's a couple of things that I, how much they'll be important here, but I do think sort of Dedra outlines it like this Uncle Harlow story. This, very sob story is like, there's a lot more to that is she's essentially using it as blackmail of like, if you don't want to cooperate on this, like, I have this information. The other scene I loved was Syril telling young new employee just how hard of a worker you can be. Like, you can rise the ranks, buddy, if you just like, not 9 to 5. You should be working till 8, work overtime. This was great. I loved it. Syril's
there's a future here for those who dare. And it's we saw his job. He just like sits there and like looks at dots. It's the macro data refinement without any of the mystery box elements to it.
It's somehow more like, dystopian. I mean, it is dystopian, but like, yeah, the MDR room that's like 10,000 cubicles all isolated is pretty gnarly. Anything else on this little storyline? It was very fun. I liked it a lot. All right, let's move to the wedding. Mon Mothma. Basically, this is all going to sort of revolve around the fact that not only just the wedding is happening, and this is an arranged marriage, and Mon Mothma is slowly going to realize like maybe it's a bad idea to put my daughter in this situation.
This deal's getting worse all the time.
Well, at the same time, Tay Kolma is being like, so I did cover up a lot of your stuff, and I think that probably, was not really great for me, and I think I'm going to need to be paid more money. All while Luthen is watching and being like, am I reading this right? He's like, we should probably kill Tay Kolma. We gotta kill Tay Kolma. That's a problem. That's a thing we can't. It's out of the bag. We gotta.
I think the
him.
implication is that, especially if we're gonna get like a bit of a time jump after these 3 episodes, which we might like. I think the implication is that he's dead. They killed him.
I forgot about that. I forgot that we are time jumping after each episode or each arc, right?
That's so we're gonna jump another year into the future right now. So you're wondering a lot like, where are the Ferrix people gonna head next? Well, they're gonna find another place to settle down for a year, and then probably have to head off again. So I want to reset this a little bit because this was the one that, because I haven't watched the end of season 1 yet in my rewatch, I really needed a reminder of, and I'm assuming many people do as well, because this I think had the biggest stuff tied into season 1. So Mon Mothma, senator that is also supporting the rebellion in her own way, has been borrowing a lot of funds to do so. I believe 400,000 credits. And usually she was kind of able to get away with it by saying that she's been donating to this like a Chandrila Foundation. And so Tay, who I believe is a banker, old friend of hers, old fling of hers as well, comes to her and is basically like, yeah, if you get audited for this, they're immediately going to catch on to what you're doing. And so he suggests that they visit this fellow Shangri-La resident named Skolden, who's sort of like a thug who will be able to kind of help erase her debts. But the deal he offers at the end of season 1 is essentially like, hey, I notice you have a daughter. Wed my son to your daughter, and I'll make sure this all goes away. And this is where Mon Mothma also does a little bit of her own, self-sacrifice, or I should say, I guess, the sacrifice of others, in that she puts her family and her daughter's happiness and safety on the line in favor of trying to get rid of any debt that might be used against her in the future.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I remembered much of that. I intended to do a rewatch before this season, but I ended up not doing so. But I did remember the majority of that. I will say, when Tay initially implies that he's blackmailing Mon Mothma, I did have to rewind the scene. I was like, wait, why is she so distraught all of a sudden?
Yeah, there's a lot in here
Hold on.
because he's also basically telling her for the first time, like, that he's like divorced from his wife, and there's
Yeah.
all this sort of stuff, and then Perrin, like Mon Mothma's husband, is kind of like thinks that maybe there's more romantic stuff, and so it's all a little like, I mean, they're speaking very vaguely, which is tough for a the television show where you're like, wait, what? But that basically that he's blackmailing, like he wants more money. It's the only way he's going to be happy with what he did, knowing likely why he did it, and with Luthen being there. Bad news for Tay Kolma trying to blackmail Mon Mothma.
Yeah, and then, but what's interesting though is, despite Luthen obviously being an associate of Mon Mothma, and Vel being her cousin, Vel was invited. Vel was a +1. Luthen was not, and it turns out that because, remember, in his day-to-day life, his big front operation, the dry cleaners, metaphorically speaking, is that he is like an antique dealer. And so Skolden hired him to find this apparently like only 8 exists in the known universe statue to offer up as a wedding gift to the new couple. But what I really enjoy about this is, it's odd to say like the specificity, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know a lot about Shangri-La culture. Mon Mothma was the only one I really knew who was from that planet. So to like have the specifics of wearing the ropes in the hair and the grass circle that the bride and groom walk around each other, even the language that they speak, it's all about this like baked in culture that felt very lived in. It felt like everyone was kind of there knowing the drill and celebrating it together. It didn't necessarily feel like, even though we were experiencing it for the first time, they certainly weren't.
Yeah, and the hike before, like they go on this hike before they think Isabel, who's like, so what happens at the top of this? And she's like, I don't know, some people, old people are gonna bless us, children are gonna sing, something like that. I don't know. Then they go and do it. But I do agree that the specificity of it, of like, this is a thing that Star Wars has in its toolbox that can do, which is like, if there are a bunch of planets out there, there are likely different cultures. I think this is a really cool and it all being tied in with this the storyline of and the way that they make sure that Luthen is there and all the other characters are there. I thought it worked. It was really effective. But what'd you make of it, Taran?
Yeah, I agree. I think this was the best stuff of the 3 episodes. I think that for all the reasons already said, I think the character work was really good here. It's just like, Mon Mothma having to deal with so many different things between Luthen showing up. She's like, "Why are you here? Why are you here? Oh, it's a secret." And then Tay pestering her about like, "Yeah, so my wife left me," and then just her own guilt of what she's doing, what she sees that she's doing to her daughter, to the point where she then like says to her like, "Listen, we can just stop this right now," like and then gets sort of like shut down by her daughter, and you almost kind of think like, did she, I mean, is that kind of what she expected though? Like, was this just kind of a way for her to like clear her
Yeah.
conscience a little bit, to be like, I'm gonna give her the out even though I know she's not gonna take it? So there's definitely like a lot of interesting stuff going on here, and I think this is the kind of stuff I will say in general that I like the show for the most, is like anytime Luthen's on the screen and all the Mon Mothma stuff. Like, this is usually like the best stuff, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think when she does make that offer to her, I do think it is genuine, but I think it also maybe serves to her as a larger metaphor of like, okay, maybe I can undo some of the bad decisions that I make. Like, okay, if she says no, then I don't need to get scolded involved, and then the money doesn't matter. I'll figure it out some other way. We don't need to get Tay involved at all. But I think that was for her like a rubber stamping essentially of not only this marriage, but also this idea of like, yeah, you got in bed with the wrong people, and now you're gonna have to figure out your way out of it. But first, dance the night away. It's fine. You'll deal with it in the
Well,
morning.
well, and it's the same sort of thing when she tells Luthen about Tay, and it's like, what do you think Luthen is gonna do about that? You know what I mean? And she's like, no, don't worry, we'll have a meeting
We're
next
having a
week.
meeting. Yeah.
And it's like I almost get this sense that she is still trying to distance herself from the dirtier parts of this while still recognizing that maybe they are necessary. And I think that's obviously a central point of her character, but like, it's interesting to see the different ways that she is trying to deny those parts, even perhaps to herself.
Yeah, I love the exchange of her, Luthen's trying to lay something on implicity, and she says, I'm not sure what you're saying. And he's like, well, good for you. How nice for you.
I think the other thing about that I think is there's a way in which that I think is really fascinating is the level to which I really do want to talk about the dance, the like drinking and going out dancing thing. It is where we leave her this episode.
It was very much giving Carrie Coon in the White Lotus season 3.
Yeah, 100%. I really love it, and what I think, not just because it's like it's very fun. It's like it's extremely fun it's like, again, it's so un-Star Wars, I feel like, to just be like, yes, this woman is like dancing on the dance floor. She's drunk. She's like vibing out to the DJ Roomba orb. But it also is a way in which I think there, and I don't know if this is where we're going, and so I might just be reading into this, but there's a way in which eventually the rebellion has to happen. Like it has to like full blown happen. And that will dramatically change people's lives. And I think Luthen is in a similar, but like Luthen, like he's so in. And it's not that Mon isn't in, but there's a way in which her life is different than Luthen's life, right? And there is a level of sacrifice that I think she's like keeps but as soon as it breaks, like that's it. And if it looks like it's even, the other piece too is like, if it crumbles before you can even do it, then what's the point? There's all of these layers, I think, to this. And she actually is like kind of privileged in the sense that she can have a night on the dance floor and forget about all the bad stuff that might be happening in terms of the rebellion because of the position she's in. And that doesn't make her like the work that she's doing in this thing any less important, but it is a fact that she does end the night on the dance floor. It'll be very interesting, Mike, to see where she is in the time jump.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Because I imagine that, as Taran has alluded to, this Tay matter was taken care of almost immediately. I would be very surprised if Tay is still alive, assuming the time jump is to next year.
The look on the chauffeur made me like I was like, oh, and we're gonna see it, and I thought the chauffeur was gonna like, right? Does that not what that's the way I read that? Like Vel is looking at the.
Yeah, she recognizes her.
Well, yeah. So that's Cinta. So Cinta was one of the heist people. She's Vel's partner, like life partner, and I'm not sure because I believe they left the planet together. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Like, because Vel clearly didn't know that Cinta was Tay's driver, or was she doing something else for Luthen and Vel didn't realize it?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I got confused about where Vel was in all of this. Like, she's just kind of walking around.
Well, she also has a different hair. She has a different hair color as well, so it's maybe she has a different attitude.
See, I thought the read of that was like I misheard that it's Cinta, but a little bit of this like, oh, you have to kill that guy. Like he's gonna be in the thing, and you're gonna shoot him in the back of the head or whatever. That's a little bit, but then we didn't see it, so it's like, oh, okay. And then I forgot they were time jumping. So.
And it's also very fun because Cinta is played by Varada Sethu, who is the Doctor's newest companion on this season of Doctor Who. So she's double dipping on Disney Plus in April and May.
Wow, fun.
Boy, the Doctor and Star Wars.
And also, there's a lot of characters, a lot of people. So everyone, forgive me for the credit. But did we know that Vel and Luthen's assistant, that they had we get that too. Is that not alluded to, that they were romantically involved at some point, or did I misunderstand
They
that?
definitely had tension in season 1 that I can remember. I don't remember if it was specifically
Maybe I'm
like
just
I mean, Vel kind of had tension with
sexual tension.
everybody because she was like kind of
Yeah.
just like
yeah, fair
after
enough.
the whole Aldani stuff, she was just very persnickety, being like, "We just
Who
went
has
through
she
all that."
not gotten into an argument with?
It's a
Yeah,
very good
fair.
question. It's a very small list.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that like they were very likely, Colma's dead and gone, and however long we jump forward, there'll be a little like I'm assumingly that they'll then have to figure out how to like try to have covered that up. But where do we imagine oh, the other piece of this storyline is, I did you feel like it was there's a moment where um Luthen is talking to a man about his Gorman heritage, right? He's talking about
Yes.
how he's a Gorman, and that man is like, and I felt like, I wonder if Luthen is on to like, is that a coincidence, or is that a like
Mm.
Luthen knows that there are like could he know that like the rebellion that was what that was in some form provocated by the Empire? Like I think there's definitely I feel like in terms of where we're going, I mean, it seems like we're going to Gorman. This is at least one way in which I could see like, oh, that's how these group of people get involved
Yeah, I
in
think
Gorman.
that's very valid. I could see this be one of the possible hiding places of the Ferrix crew. It's like, yeah,
Right.
go to Gorman. There's these giant spider caves that nobody really goes inside. So you can just hide out there for the time being. And then, of course, the Empire is doing their like super secret, decret undercover thing that will just blow up the planet in the first place. And that's going to lead to maybe this moments where all the parties find each other again. So I don't know if that's, a year from now or 2 years from now. We'll see, as clandestine of a project as this is, like, how much they want to be upfront about. Like, you can't really bring a lot of mining equipment into Gorman and try to get away with it without people realizing that something's up.
Mhm. Yeah, I imagine we'll be heading there for in the future for sure.
Yeah. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground for 3 episodes. But is there anything we missed?
I'm not
Yeah, I think
entirely sure.
we've
Don't
done a
think so.
pretty good job. I feel like just to reiterate the points, I feel like I think it sounds like I'm a little higher than the two of you. And so even if I don't think it's like the best Andor I've ever seen, I think there's a lot of promise here in what they set up. But probably the problem is that there's a lot going on, and a lot of it is set up for what's to come. So while maybe these episodes didn't work, especially after such a long wait between seasons, I do think there's a lot of promise left as we head into next week, Mike.
Yeah, for me, I think my final take was that I've mixed positive review on Andor episodes 1 through 3. I think there was a lot of stuff that largely worked. Namely, I loved my star-crossed lovers in Dedra and Syril, and I think the Mon Mothma stuff. Once I sort of got my head into remembering what was going on and trying to read between the lines in all these conversations, really enjoy both the aesthetics and material in there. I think the other side would be, again, the Maya Pei Brigade was not necessarily in on it, much like a lot of Big Brother 12 fans were not in on them at the time. Even like the stuff on Mina Rao, I don't know. I'm hot and cold when it comes to the Ferrix characters in general. Like, Bix was the only one I really left season 1 with like really any sort of opinion on, so I could kind of take or leave the stuff that was going on there. But I would say overall, I think it's a solid start. I think, given the way that season 1 ended, I think I was personally expecting to be like wowed out of the gate, and maybe I did in that very first scene. But I think once we've reasonably set our expectations, and I think once the three of us talk through some of the meatier stuff that might be initially thought of when you watch these episodes, the more it makes me excited and intrigued to see, when we jump forward a year, is the momentum going to continue, or do they now have to accomplish the job of once again resetting the scene and telling us where these people are in the next time jump?
Yeah, that's a little bit of my fear, but I think that they have been successful in the past. And so I do, even though I was not like overwhelmingly positive on this, and I think some of that was probably expectations coming in. I do still, as I said in the start of this, have a lot of faith that we will get there, and it will be very exciting. So yeah, I would say just sort of like mediocre response to it right now, but not down on the show quite yet.
All right. Well, we will be back next week with another 3-episode arc to recap. In the meantime, Mike Bloom, where can people find you? What are you up to?
At a Mike Bloom type, talking Survivor, talking Amazing Race. We are also well into this season of The Last of Us at this point, which all 3 of us are talking about. So yeah, plenty out there on the interwebs, talking scripted and unscripted alike.
Taran, what about you?
Find me on YouTube and Twitch, streaming, watching shows, talking about shows. We also have a podcast I do with Grace called The Taste Makers. We talk about all the latest stuff coming out, what's good, what's bad, all that good stuff. So check that all out.
I'm on social media at Hi from Grace or at Go from Grace, one of the two. You'll find me online. And yeah, as I said, we'll be back until next time. Bye-bye.